Welcome to Road to Redline. This is the Porsche podcast looking at the people and the stories that make this industry tick. Today, we have got our first guest, and it is an absolute privilege to have Mr. Carl Mayer with us. Carl, hello.
Hi, Lee.
So, if you don't know Carl is someone with an extensive experience in this wonderful Porsche industry. He's been buying and selling Porsche sports cars for the best part of 20 years now, working at various dealerships around the UK, and he is now doing his own venture, which is PorscheBuyer.com. We'll dive straight in, shall we?
Hi. Welcome. Thanks very much. Thanks for having us.
Really been looking forward to having you on the podcast, Carl, because not only are you a bit of a buddy of ours for the past couple of years, but you have extensive experience, if you like, at Porsche centres up and down the country. So I'm hoping that as well as your market knowledge, you might be able to impart some insider information to us and those listening at home as to what it's like really at a Porsche dealership, and particularly with GT cars and whatnot, which I'm sure we'll get onto.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, certainly got a bit of a unique insight into.
We want to hear all the dirty gossip from behind.
Yeah, that's
the
what
scenes.
everyone wants to hear, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sure
free from the reign of a PR contact, maybe saying what you can and cannot say. So we'll get you on a couple of times if this goes well. It's a bit of a job interview, really. If it goes all right, we'll have you back.
Okay, I've got my CV ready and I've got some stories for you. So yeah.
So come on then, Carl. This podcast is called Road to Redline, and we like to find out the stories behind people that make the industry tick. So where did your story start? What got you into cars in the first place?
Yeah, so probably like most people listening to this, Dad that worked as a car mechanic, so grew up literally underneath cars from as early as I can remember, just loving cars. And my dad just begged me to do anything I wanted to do in life, just don't go into the motor trade. So after resisting it for about 30 years, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think it genuinely became like a kind of passion that was just too strong to fight, actually. It was really weird. I did actually pursue a sales career, loved it, really enjoyed my sales career, but kind of pushing early 30s, I just couldn't resist the urge anymore, and I just desperately wanted to get into it. And I'd bought and sold a few older cars and lesser things just with my own money, slowly working my way up to getting my first Porsche. And when that happened, bought and sold my first Porsche and just really had the bug and thought, if I've got 30 odd years more inside me, I just really want to explore this. So put my feelers out and ended up being very lucky, given an opportunity within a Porsche centre, and the rest is history.
So what was on your wall growing up then, poster wise?
Yeah.
And car-related.
I was going to say, other than the Danny Minogue photo, yeah.
Danny Minogue.
I showed
Really?
my age there.
I was going to say, with your age, more like Linda Lusardi.
I can picture it now. Yeah, Sam Fox, Linda Lusardi. Yeah, that's definitely, there's an age bracket there, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm in it.
So, yeah, what was on the wall? Ferrari Testarossa, I think everyone had that picture. I think everyone had the Lamborghini Countach. I had that picture. I had a couple of BMWs, and of course I did have a 930 Turbo, red 930 Turbo, which I think again was the standard sort of childhood growing up in the 80s. Everyone had that photograph. So yeah, that was the cars on the wall. I also, I really distinctly remember having the first press photo of a 996. And it was in a yellow colour, which wasn't speed yellow.
Lighter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name now. Actually, it was a pastel yellow. It was only available on Gen 1 cars, really early Gen 1 cars. Perhaps we'll come back to it, but it was kind of a canary yellow. Yeah, and I just remember absolutely loving that photograph, and that was I cut out of a newspaper. It was before you could sort of print off stuff from the internet, because it existed in a lot more boring form from then. But yeah, I just always been mad into cars, genuinely absolutely mad, and I bet you loads of people listening to this as well can just appreciate that.
What did your dad tinker with then? What sort of cars?
Dad was a Honda mechanic, but he sort of was like the guy that everyone used to go to just fix their cars if it was bizarre stuff. I remember my dad doing a conversion of an automatic or a manual car to an automatic on our driveway and watching that. But like, so he was always doing really crazy kind of things, and that was so much fun to be just a part of that and watch that. I remember him putting a few old Honda Accords that had been written off and putting them back up, and getting them on a jig and stuff like that. So it was good fun. Just got the opportunity to sort of watch and get your hands dirty. Yeah. But I knew that definitely wasn't my skill set. I knew I wasn't ever going to be any good with a spanner. So
is that still true today?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, definitely not your technician. But it's nice because it I think to add value to people on the sales floor in a Porsche centre, I think you have to be technically minded. I think the excellent Porsche sales execs out there in the country are people that understand the product from an engineering point of view, and from, I always say this to Lee, the full title of Porsche is it's Doctor of Engineering Porsche Limited, if you like. They are still an engineering company and proud to be. So I think people that work for Porsche who really want to give customers an experience should be able to at least liaise and consult with their customers on that level. So and also when you're studying stuff, okay, so you guys won't know this, but when you work for Porsche, you have to do online tests every week, 2 weeks, and they come through thick and fast. And if you don't do them on time, your manager gets an email from PCGB and you're in trouble. So and Porsche centres actually, their docked margin if all of their sales execs are not bang up to date on these product tests. Okay. So they're a really big part of working in the network.
Like tech specs, knowing how much horsepower this car's got.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a bunch of questions from understanding the technology on the cars.
Yeah.
The spec on the cars, so numbers, 0 to 60s, that sort of stuff. It's also very focused, and I love this, it's actually very focused on the history of the brand and the family, and so it covers a wide variety of stuff.
Take us back to the start of your Porsche story. So how did you end up certainly at Porsche as business manager of a dealership?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So the story actually started. I owe a lot to a chap who worked for Porsche. This is just pure coincidence. So I'd made my mind up that Porsche is what I want to do with my life, and this was going to be a vocational thing. And so when I made up my mind on that, I reached out to everybody I knew and said, "Do you know anybody who works for Porsche? Because I want to pursue this." And I was actually in headhunting and recruitment. So I kind of knew that there were certain things that you could do to get yourself a foot in the door at companies that perhaps you weren't qualified for. And I was completely unqualified. All I had was a passion for this brand forever, and bought 3 or 4 Porsches with my own money and sold them successfully. So I reached out, and just by pure coincidence, a friend of a friend happened to know a salesperson at a Porsche centre, and that guy happened to be the number 1 sales guy in the country for Porsche. So he was their top sales guy. He was based at Porsche head office, Reading. And I called him, I got given his number, and I remember calling him. And by the way, at this point, I'd unsuccessfully sent loads of CVs to local Porsche centre and other Porsche centres. It never got the phone call back because, of course, they're looking at a CV of a sales guy who's never sold a car in his life, and so you just wouldn't get a call back. But I spoke to this guy, and he was just lovely, and he gave me about an hour and a half of his time on the phone, completely from, didn't know me from Adam, and really encouraged me. And he said, by the way, don't let anybody convince you that just because you haven't been in this industry and sold lots and lots and lots of cars, that you can't do the job. Because he said, I came from a non-car sales background, and he said, I came straight in from doing something completely different, and here he is, top sales guy in the country. Yeah. So that encouraged me, and we stayed in touch, and it was about 9 months later I got a phone call from him, and he just said, look, I'm actually looking, I'm moving, I'm leaving the country. He was going to Jersey to work for Porsche in Jersey, and he said, my seat is available where I am now, and he said, I just thought of you. He said, I thought you'd be a really good replacement for me. Would you be interested in moving from Bournemouth to Reading? And if it had been for anything else on planet Earth, it would have been a straight up no, but for Porsche, it was a straight up yes. So he introduced me to his boss, and the interview process was grueling. It was, I had a first interview with the dealer principal. 2 weeks went past and I sort of sent polite follow-ups and all the rest of it. And this is where the recruitment career actually came in really handy, because it just helped me manage my own expectations to how to get a foot in the door successfully. And left it for a couple of weeks, followed up again. And the dealer principal said, look, great news. We've had something like 150 CVs for the role, but you are shortlisted. Would you like to come back? I think they were having 2 sets of 12 people for a kind of like a group interview type of thing. And I just remember turning up to Porsche Centre head office, which, like, if you're into the brand in the way that most of us are, it's so scary. Like, it's proper daunting.
Big old place, yeah.
Oh my God, mate, honestly. And it's like a dream thing. I was shaking walking through the door, really, really nervous. Like, you know, when you sort of like hands are like, you know, sweaty palms, just so worried, and walk through the door. And you're greeted by all of these other sales guys in this room, and there was, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm not sure how many of us. And I was kind of like doing the polite thing. Hi, who are you? And it was, I'm Audi's top RS sales guy in the country. I'm from Ferrari. I'm their top volume seller for BMW, Mercedes UK. There's loads of really, really qualified people there, yeah. And sort of anybody who's asking me who I am, I was like, I'm just a nobody, really. So went through that process, and I felt that went well. Again, another 2 or 3 weeks went by, didn't hear anything. I'd sent my nice polite email, I'd made a phone call, and actually I was in my current job. There was a big restructure at a recruitment company that I was at. And we were in this restructure, and I'll never forget it. I was in a restructuring meeting just watching my future job disappear before my eyes. I was thinking, I'm out. Like, there's no place for me left at this company if this restructure happens. And it was happening right in front of my eyes, with the board members. And my phone rang, and it was it was the legend who was Stephen Lay, who was dealer principal at Porsche Centre Reading. And he gave me a call, and he said, look, you're down to the final 2. Can you come in next week for an interview? So I went in. It was a late night interview, and there was like I think it's changed now, but when I did it, there was an arithmetic test, a language English test to see that you could write an email and, grammatically could put it together nicely. There was a sort of HR type of interview, and then there was a final interview of a panel of 3 or 4 guys. So it was really grueling. And I remember walking out, and the salesman had just said something along the lines of, he said, you do realise that people like you just can't walk in off the street and get a job here. This is Porsche head office. And I thought he was like massively letting me down. I thought, crikey, that's a like real blow. Yeah. And I said that to him, and he said, no, don't get me wrong. He said, I like you. He said, for what it's worth, you've got my vote. But he said, there's 4 other people in there. And he said, my friends asked me for a job. And he said, I can't get them a job. He said, because they're just, they're not up to the grade.
Wow.
So I thought he was letting me down, but he said that, and he said, look, we'll round table this, and he said, we'll let the successful applicant know later tonight. And I got a phone call about 9:30, and it was on it, mate. Honestly, it was like winning the lottery. Okay. I don't think it could have felt better. Like, genuinely, I don't think it could have felt better.
Excellent. To
get that phone call and just hear those words and say, we'd like to congratulate you. You work at Porsche head office. It's like, oh my God, like your dream brand, dream job. And then, start from there. So,
How long did it take from the saying yes to actually getting your upping sticks and relocating and all that?
That's a good question. I think it was a month or maybe 2. Yeah.
It's fairly quickly.
It was pretty quickly.
So you've gone in the door then, first day at Porsche. Expectations versus reality.
Yeah.
What were those first few weeks like?
I loved every second of it. Like, literally, my first minute walking through the door, as I walked through, and I'd never been exposed to this atmosphere or environment before. But it was, on my desk was a Porsche mouse. It was like a Porsche cup. I remember texting my best mate, just going, mate, there's Porsche crap everywhere. I love this. It was just literally, it's like my absolute dream. I probably was. I'm sure I was really annoying to the rest of my colleagues for it, because they, obviously, I was really like a kid in a sweet shop. It was out of this world exciting for me, and do you know what? That never wore off. It hasn't worn off now.
Well, most of that toot has ended up in your bathroom, isn't it? I know you've had to take it down now, obviously, after marrying your good wife, Alondra, who rightly didn't want to put up with that.
Yeah.
But I remember calling round to yours one time, and, I mean, his bathroom is like an actual shrine to Porsche, or it was at the time. Yeah, very impressive.
I did have to have a word with myself. At one stage, I sort of went in there and I just thought that, this is like it's like a Porsche showroom in the spare bathroom. So, yeah, we did actually, Yeah, I did have a clear out. But yeah, it's kind of weird. I think everyone's made to do something in life, and I just feel it took me 30 years to figure out that was what I was meant to do. And it even though there's loads of difficult things that come with working with this brand, and I've met tons of people that brand has chewed up and spat out. Yeah. Tons and tons and tons. Because it's really difficult. But I don't know, when you love something, you can withstand the difficulty in it, and you don't begrudge it. And that's how I'd sum up my relationship with Porsche. There's been some incredibly tough stuff I've been through. But you just kind of, if you love it, you just keep going.
So come on then. So targets, customers, management. What was it all like? Paint a picture for us on what it's like working at a Porsche dealership today.
I think the biggest...
Before we jump into that, just to break that down a little bit, was Reading a very different place to Bournemouth? Because obviously we're talking Porsche centres here.
Yeah,
you've got
Reading's
the biggest
retail group, isn't it?
So you got the biggest Porsche centre in the country, head office, versus a small spin-off, not main dealer.
Yeah. That's a really, really crackingly good question, actually, because that opens up a lot of conversation. Short answer, in my experience, every Porsche dealership is an immensely different flavour of the same brand. So all of your listeners will know this. You have been into a Porsche centre and you've been loved and looked after and treated immensely well. And you go to another Porsche dealership and it's been a terrible service, and you think, well, where's the uniformity in that? And it really is about the people. It is as simple as that. The crest and the badge above the door is what we all live for. But honestly, it's the people within the businesses are ultimately what makes a good centre and what makes a bad one. We're in the privileged position now with our little business, which buys for Porsche centres. I get to speak to most of the dealerships in the country at some point or some level, and just even the way they view the product is different. Really, really different. So some dealerships, and most people are surprised about this, and this is probably the only reason we exist as a business, is because one centre will not necessarily see your car at the same value as another. And that difference can be anywhere between 5% and 10%, which it shouldn't be, should it? You should think there should be a book value. All Porsches are, you can know what they're worth.
Yeah, a sense of uniformity about it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Is that more down to like location or local trends, or where they are in the country?
I think definitely. I think also it just goes to show maybe the psychological or subliminal stuff that centres tell themselves about certain stock. So, for example, right now, without naming centre names, there are two very, very big dealer groups, and I can tell you that if we get a Gen 2 GT3 and we offer it to both of those dealer groups, I know right now that one of them will hugely overpay for PDK, because PDK are what they've told themselves is on top and selling better. Mm-hmm. And the other dealer group couldn't disagree more, and they feel that manual cars sell better and there's a premium on manual cars.
That could be a location thing there, couldn't it? Because if you're like a London...
Well, both of these are dealer groups with loads of centres across the country.
Okay.
So I can't work out why, other than it's just kind of, when we used to get it all the time at the centres. You'd have a car in stock, it would get old, and as soon as it gets old, we always used to have this phrase where we'd say, like, just the team fall out of love with the car for no reason other than it's old. So you just psychologically tell yourself there's a problem car. It's been sat there for 90 days, so it's a problem car. And actually, all of a sudden, like 3 or 4 people ring up for it, and they're all in love with it, and you can kind of see what's so special about the car again. So I think sometimes centres just tell themselves within the teams, oh, this is good news or this is bad news, and then you you manifest it almost.
I think you can see certain centres catching a cold with cars, can't you? Because I had it when I decided to change the GT4, and Bournemouth had 3 on their forecourt, and I think at least 2 out of the 3 have been there for the best part of 6 months, and they were really struggling with them, and they just did not want to buy my car back. And I mean, they made me a bid on it that was over 10 grand, I think it was, less than what another Porsche centre ended up paying for it. Yeah. And that was quite something, I think. Yeah,
there's lots of factors that play into that, because I've seen centres overpaying for stock when they're on a huge used car drive. So if you haven't got stock, you can't hit that used car target. So they'll overpay for stock. We've seen centres overpay for colours that they just know they sell well, even though there's no reason for that other than the fact that they just happen to have a bit more data that they've sold, Miami blue cars well, or whatever it might be. So that's something that still surprises me now, to be honest. I just think that's bizarre, because you don't get that with other brands. You don't get that so much with other brands, but Porsche, you do seem to find the spec of a car seems to be as individual as us as the owners.
Do you think that's why you get it with Porsche? Because the most Porsches are very, like you said, individually spec'd. You go to some of the other, certainly the more mundane brands, and they're kind of out of the box with a few options. Porsche, everything's an option.
Yes.
A base model Porsche barely comes with doors.
Yeah. No, Joe's right. It's definitely down to the uniqueness. That's why I think the world will always struggle to ever pull off a we buy any car for Porsches, because there is no correct book value. It really needs to be based on how that car's been loved and looked after, what the individual spec is on that car. And that's, I don't think we're doing anything rocket sciencey from my business point of view. I just think that's the only thing I'm doing that other people are not, is just really understanding what the brand is and understanding all the buyers in the country of what their drive is at any specific time. So have they got a used car target? Have they got a buying target? Have they got a love for Miami blue cars? Have they got a preference to, manuals, PDK, whatever that is? And every buying group has. They've got funny little things that they do. So it's kind of nice. It does mean that you can get a real diversity across the network, which is what it should be, shouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. So you've gone from Porsche Reading, where you're in your sales capacity. I assume there is a target for the centre, and that's divvied up among the staff. And
yes.
Your responsibility for that is between you and your line managers, who you report into and whatnot.
Correct. Yeah.
So I mean, I can't remember exactly your figures, but you smashed it, didn't you, at Reading by your own admission?
I did. So I was at Reading for just under 1 year.
Yeah.
And my last month there was a September, which is typically your biggest months anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember doing very, very well in that particular September.
Yeah.
And also Reading, to be fair to them as well now. So Reading are part of Porsche Retail Group, and they remunerate their staff. So the package is still, I think, very, very healthy in the car business in general. I was speaking to somebody about this only last week. And what seems to be one of the problems, I think, is car dealerships in general seem to be paying their staff less and less and less every year. Porsche Retail Group, their package is and always was really, really good. So if you smashed it and had an amazing month, it was like properly, you really, really, it was worth the hard work.
Yeah. So you left Porsche Reading, you came back down to Porsche Bournemouth. Yeah. And you worked your way up to business manager over a set time. What's the kind of change in mentality from being part of the sales team to, fronting the business essentially?
Yeah. So, number one is you don't have to do the online tests. And honestly, that was just, I think that's one of the things that's so celebrated in the Porsche community. As soon as you get promoted to manager, you don't have to log into that diary system. You don't have to do those online tests. And that is a huge weight off of your mind. So you can just really concentrate on the people and stuff. I don't know. If I'm being really brutally honest with myself, and I've said this to lots of people, even at Porsche Bournemouth, I don't think I was ever the best manager. I think I really loved having the autonomy to look after individual sales so expansively. So when you're a salesperson, you just look after your own customer. When you're a manager in the sales department, you get to look after all the customers, and that's really nice. I really, really liked that. I think, what else would I say is a big difference? I think immediately when you are a manager within a Porsche Centre, I think it's a really privileged role. So, and you do feel that. You do feel really, really special to have that relationship with the customers. Customers are looking to you for guidance and to make sure things go wrong. And oh my God, do things go wrong? Like like everything you can imagine that can go wrong within car dealerships does on a regular basis. And that's at every centre for every car brand on planet Earth. Just some centres have become very good at managing that. But as a manager, you get to see it, and probably one of the biggest things is you have to eat a bit of humble pie. So you're often the guy sat there, and it might be a sales exec has done something very stupid, and you're the guy that's going to get shouted at for it, and you just got to accept that. Yeah, that is part of it. So yeah, that's quite funny. So yeah, I'm even laughing and giggling at certain things that happened at certain centres that I've heard about and worked at, and yeah, and the worst thing is, I'll tell. Okay, so here's a real honesty one. So you realise how hard work you were as a sales exec for your poor manager who managed you. That's something that was a humbling thing. And so I had managers at Porsche Centre Reading who, the first one who trained me, second one who came in relatively new to the team and inherited me as a newbie. And it's not until you're in the seat and you've got a newbie in your team and you're just like, bloody heck. You really do have to be very patient, very nurturing. And so all the stuff you did to your sales manager is now being done to you, and you think, oh my goodness me, you see it. It's the next stage of life, isn't it? You see it from the other side of the table.
So, Carl, there is something that's been talked about a few times, and hopefully you might be able to give us an insight, having been head office and a local centre, and that is the reluctance that people have to walk into a big shiny dealership, because I think there's a weird intimidating feeling that not as everybody, but I think a lot of people do get. Just to be able to pull up and walk into somewhere that sells £100,000 plus supercars, there's a weird thing that happens to people.
There's definitely a level of intimidation.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
I really empathise with it, and I think I've got some really personal feelings about it as a salesperson.
I bet you love it. They're not going to strong arm you, are they? They're scared. So lovely jubbly.
Well, it's actually the opposite. So we were just talking off air a little bit, because one of my bosses, so the dealer principal who was at Bournemouth, and when I was there, lovely guy, and he admitted to us as a team, because this was a training exercise, he said, guys, I've got to tell you, on my first day starting here, I was incredibly nervous about walking through the door of my own dealership. There's something immensely intimidating about all the glass and the metal and the grey tiles and the steel, and I think his point was, we need to appreciate that's how most customers feel. And I've spoken to multi-billionaires who you would think are formidable people in their own rights, and who have admitted to me in private, I'm so intimidated to walk through the doors of a Porsche Centre, and they seem to be it wrongly, and this is really not the truth. So I can tell you this with hand on heart. In a lot of Porsche Centres, it might be that Porsche sales guys are out the back on their computers or in an office that's elevated above the first floor. In a lot of Porsche Centres, they are, and I've had lots of customers confide in me and say, it really makes me feel intimidated. Everyone's looking down on me. I think it's structured wrong and all the rest of it. And more often than not, there is, you couldn't be further from the truth about people or the sales exec having any kind of feelings like that towards customers. Not at all. But if you go into a centre and you are intimidated because you're surrounded by these, very expensive cars, how the people behave is so important. So as a salesperson, I was just really conscious of being warm to people when they came in, because I knew that they were probably feeling how I, when I said like my first interview at Porsche head office, honestly, like I'll never forget that feeling. And I think a lot of customers experience that as well.
I think it's a judgment thing, isn't it? I think. Sorry, I cut across. Yeah, I think it's just you feel like you're being judged when you walk in, and there's a pressure that if you're in a Porsche centre, you should be spending big amounts of money, even if you are just going to the service desk. But
parts desk for me.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Because as far as I go,
Porsche, like on the surface, have tried to change it, and where there's like the classic scheme now, it's trying to bring these older cars back, and that's kind of bringing a different crowd through the door that perhaps 10 years ago might not have stepped through a Porsche centre. Because if you own a 986 Boxster that's 10, 15 years old, back then you've not really got any business being in a Porsche dealership, is the perception.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of things. So I did the classic clinic at Bournemouth. That was really good. You just rock up, have a look over your car. One of the guys, I think it's Nick who's been there for
Nick Perry,
he's
60 years or something.
Yeah,
he knows everything. He had a good look over my car, and that was it was a nice experience. Spoke to Rod, who has been there for a long time.
Yeah, Rod's a really experienced guy.
Do you feel like things like that? Did that help break down some of those barriers to walk in the front door?
Definitely, yeah. Another thing that I did was up at Swindon. They had a 993 technical forum, which was Porsche Club organised.
Brilliant.
But that was really good. There's just 80 993s parked out the front.
Wow.
And they set it up so that they had different areas. There were a bit that was concentrating on service, wheel alignment, tyres, detailing.
Well, that's done a job then, because you otherwise wouldn't have walked through the door at a Porsche dealership. I think is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I've learned from that, really, those experiences, that when it comes to actually buying parts, because I do a lot of the work on my cars myself, that actually the Porsche dealership is probably the best place to buy it, because you know you're getting the right thing. Yeah. And the majority of the time, it's actually cheaper than
prices
a lot of the other places.
Surprisingly well supported at Porsche dealerships.
You do have to be picky, but majority, And
most people don't realise you can have a bit of a deal with servicing. You normally can.
So you, as you've alluded to, that you felt personally about this kind of what's the right word? Intimidation. Like maybe a culture
barrier at the door, isn't it?
You feel like an imposter, don't you?
Yeah. So you're personally aware of it, but are the team aware of it? Is the centre aware of it as a body of staff?
Yeah, I think that probably differs with every centre to varying levels. I was lucky when I joined Bournemouth. I think there was a real drive there to bring back some of the humility that goes with serving people. And for me personally, I definitely would say I built my entire time at Bournemouth on that principle. You are serving somebody, and it is a service role, and I think what I would encourage anybody selling any prestige brand, doesn't matter whether it's Porsche, but certainly Porsche because it's the closest to my heart, is if you are in a sales role, please don't forget you're serving somebody, and therefore just because you walk in every day and you have a nice suit on and you're surrounded by cars that have an average value of £100,000, don't forget that you're there to serve somebody. And and actually, so like I said, I was pretty lucky. So when I joined Bournemouth, that was very much the drive, was to just remember that this place is only going to be as good as the people in the building who remember that we're there to love people and serve them. And to his credit, the gentleman who started that centre, who's still a really good friend of mine who I respect immensely, who's Brian Deeks, who opened the doors in the 70s. He got that, and that's why that centre was so super successful on a global scale. That centre had some really high accolades. It was known for its customer service to Germany, globally, for how it performed, and I think that is because he was very much that kind of chap. So when I joined there was a real drive to bring that humility and service back. And honestly, that was transformative for the team. It was good. It was really, really good.
Okay, so off the back of that then, GT cars, this is where we're going now.
Okay.
And won't go for the juggler just yet. No, I'm only
Yeah.
joking. So the period that you were at Porsche, for example, you dealt with the RS 4 litre 997 of 2000 and
Yeah,
2012.
Only just.
Yeah, and then obviously a more recent example was the R of 2016. So GT cars, and in particular reference to those two, numbered production cars.
Sure.
So how does this work with getting a GT car? Can you, having not bought a single, and this is in this day and age, because you've told me before, and we should touch on it, about how kind of attitudes have changed from 15 years ago to now.
Yeah.
But can you walk off the street? If you have the money, can you walk off the street? Can you go in and can you get a GT car and a numbered production run? How does it work? Because there's so much gumph going around online as to where this is all going. So
I want to give as honest an answer as I can possibly give to this question. I have been surprised that there's quite a span to that answer. So I'll give you one really honest response. Last year, I have alongside with the buying business, I probably look after somewhere in the region of 20 high net worth individuals. I just look after their buying and selling of their cars for them. And my job is to generally negotiate the hardest deal I can when they're buying and negotiate the hardest deal when they're selling. So when you've got 20 people like that as a consortium, my sort of mind in terms of trying to find a bit of an angle on that is I actually approached a handful of centres that I do a lot of work with and said, look, I've got, at the time, I think it was maybe 7 or 8 people that were serial Porsche buyers. So these guys, between, I think the consortium I'd put together was probably as little as 5 or 6 people who are serial buyers, and that means they're buying 5, 6, 7, 8 cars a year each. Okay, so very often one of the things that people overlook is when they go into a Porsche centre and they can't get the deal. You have got to remember there are some customers out there that are buying nearly 10 cars a year for their families. So between those 5 or 6 people, we were looking at 50 to ish cars a year. And I approached those centres and said, look, is this attractive to you guys? We could bring 50 to 60 cars a year to you, but in return, those handful of people would like to be considered for GT cars. Now, because I was in the job, I know that there is a right way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it. At the centres I worked in, certainly at Porsche Bournemouth, we took a really hard line on this, and we just said, look, there is so much opportunity to do the whole GT thing dishonestly. There is, and goodness only knows what does happen in the rest of the network. At the centre I worked at, we took a very moral line on it, and that's because all of us who worked there were convinced that we would be involved with Porsche for our entire lives. So I was, took the view to just do it in the most fair way as possible in terms of however allocations and names could be put forward, etc., etc. So I thought that would be quite an attractive thing for a particular centre, and the response I got back from, I put that forward to 2 centres, and the response we got back from both of those centres was, look, yes, that is super attractive. We would love to have those customers' business because that's an extra 50, 60, 80 cars on our bottom line every year. But the truth is, we really just want to focus on our own postcode. We have our own customers who have been loyal to us for, decades. And sorry, but we don't have the extra allocation of GT cars to do that. I was pleased to hear that because I just thought that's a proper answer. Yeah. And that's, even though it was attractive and they wanted to do that, a lot of centres are put under a lot of pressure to keep their GT vehicles with people that have existing relationships with them, number one, and are in their postcode area, number two.
Do you think the weaker centres might have jumped to that sort of setup though? Because I've heard from more than one person that there's some weaker centres in the country that you can. It's much easier to find GT cars because they haven't got the customers for them particularly.
Yeah. So that is kind of the flip side of that. Now the flip side of that same answer is I know of at least 3 cars at the back end of last year, 2019, where customers, without much of a history, let's just say, got a phone call because, and I'm not sure 100% what the circumstances were. It was either cancelled orders or extra allocation, and I can't with all intention say which, but were offered GT4s. And I know those people are not recurring people of those centres, and they were offered GT4s at the back end of the last year. And and those cars undoubtedly will be flipped. So you think, well, how can we have such a difference across the network?
It's interesting that I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, but you're portraying the GT car thing as being fairly clean and a fairly level playing field, and I'm pretty convinced that it's a dirty, horrible, dingy place to be.
Yeah.
And I think, including locally, I mean, there's, to be fair, since you've been there, one of the sales guys that moved across from somewhere else, very openly, having never met me before, told me that, one of their big, shorter run, the most interesting probably GT car of recent couple of years, went to somebody that it shouldn't have done. He had it lined up to be flipped. Wow. And that was a backhand deal with a member of staff that's no longer there, and blah. There was a backstory to everything, but it was, and I think that's really common.
Yeah. So a big part of the buying business that I'm involved with is we are the people that get that phone call, and it's horrible. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it absolutely does. So I can't tell you how many speedsters we were involved in last year. And that just
kind of sums
wrong,
it up.
Right?
How many speedsters were there?
How much
9?
do all of us out here want to have been considered to have bought a speedster?
Yeah,
genuinely to put that car in your garage and own it and love it and live with it.
How many of those gone? But roughly, if you put a number on it, how many do you think you heard of or were involved in?
Over 10% in the UK that we were involved and aware of. Over 10. That's huge. That's just that I was aware of.
Cars that were for sale.
Cars that went. Cars that were dealt, flipped.
So there was what 900 and
1,948.
1,000. Get my numbers right. So you reckon over 100 of those have been flipped?
No, the UK numbers. What do you reckon the UK allocation was?
We're talking worldwide.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So
I suspect the UK allocation was somewhere between 50 and 80.
Yeah.
So you probably saw half a dozen of those speedsters come up really quickly your way last year. I mean, that kind of sums up, doesn't it? For me,
that's too big a number for it to be a transparently legit operation.
Well, that's a car that you're talking 1,000 pieces worldwide. Yeah, you get into GT, more conventional GT product. GT4s, GT3 RSs, just straight GT3s where you've got multiple 5-figure numbers out there.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are vast, and I don't think it takes a lot to turn someone's head the wrong way in a Porsche centre.
It's a really strange position to be doing this, because obviously at Porsche my role was to protect that from happening, and as a centre I can tell you, certainly if you're doing it the honest way, and we really, really were, and I've had loads of people speculate and say, there must be dirty stuff that went on there. Genuinely at the centre I was at for the longest time at Bournemouth, there really was no funny business. Now,
you do see people buying cars though, I think, to get up their numbers of how many cars they've had. Yeah, it might not be seen as, it might not be a direct, here's a brown envelope. Yeah. But I think there's definitely people that will, they'll go and buy cars they had no real intention of buying.
Yeah.
Bit of back scratching.
Yeah, and it's like, they want to turn around and go, I bought 5 cars this year. So, when they're then putting their hand out for a GT car, it makes it very difficult for a centre to go, you do fit the criteria because you spent X. And
my thing that I ask everybody about this, and it's not me defending it in any way, shape or form, but it's just a genuine question, is what is the right way to do it? Because I've seen Ferrari fall on their ass massively. I mean, they have burnt, I reckon, 50% of their buying populace in the last 2 years doing what they've done. Now, Ferrari had a point system, as everyone knows. And I remember being in the seat at Porsche, looking at that point system, thinking, bloody hell, I wish we had a point system, because the way we are doing it is so open to, well, it was vague. There was no clarity. So
there isn't a system, is there?
No, there was no system. No official system at Porsche. I know dealerships that have got a points-based system. I thought that was quite good. Interesting, one of the centres that did run a system, it kind of rewarded you the more cars that you did, and etc. And actually, I thought that was probably half right. My addition to that, when I was speaking to that centre, is when you give that person a GT car, in my opinion, they should then lose some points to give the next person, because I think it's wrong to just have these cars consistently in the same hands of the same people. That's my personal feeling. I think loyalty goes a long way, but I also would like to see new blood come in and experience these cars, because otherwise what we're doing, we're just selling to a dying audience, aren't we? We're not actually moving the brand forward. So
I really hope they move GT cars to a rental model.
To be honest, that will kill the whole.
And I think it would get rid of the flipper market. It would get rid of the silly values, and actually, people that are really interested in driving them will pay the money.
Right.
And do
so like maybe sort of a finance.
Not even a finance. I think a straightforward. You can own a GT3 for a 12-month period. That's the cost. And I think actually people that want one to drive one and use one will pay the money to do that. Most sane people aren't going to spend a few £1,000s to stick it in the garage and never drive it. They're not going to be worried about mileage. Yeah, you put a mileage limit on it, but if it was 5,000 or 10,000 miles a year or whatever, it would encourage people to get out and actually use them. And I think the more you saw them on the street, the more you're promoting the Porsche brand, and the wheel goes around. People that wait,
big argument for that.
People that might not have bought a GT product might go and buy a Boxster or a Cayman or an entry level 911 because they see the proper cars out on the street. And I just think it'd get rid of the whole thing, because they've become that supposedly elitist. But
so I think that is a really good idea. I think something like that could be developed. It still leaves the problem, and I'm trying to piece this together myself, just thinking about it, but it still leaves the problem of you've then got to select the people who get that car. And this is the problem with the sort of limited edition stuff. There's always going to be more people for the product than there is, and that's what limited edition means, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think those people
is a horrible problem.
But I think a lot of that is because people that don't want to drive them. That's what drives that number up. A lot of those people that want GT cars, they want to put them in a collection or a garage.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I wish there was a campaign to just get them out being used.
Yes. There's a local guy who we all know, remain nameless, and he spoke to me a little while ago and said, every time I walk into a Porsche centre, I need to buy a car, but I can tell you that my blood is boiling underneath all the niceties, because I've never been able to get the GT car. That is the only car that I really want. And he's bought other cars from centres, but that really hit home to me, because I just thought, I wonder how many people I've dealt with in a centre that actually underneath the niceties of buying their Cayenne, which they need or what have you, actually they've got a real bad taste in their mouth. They've been really let down and really upset. I think that's something to just perhaps bear in mind, because I think that feeling runs deep with a lot of Porsche customers, and especially the last couple of years where it's been totally abused.
I think it's only runs deep with people that are actually interested in owning and driving. The people that are passionate about those cars. Because the ones that are just buying to flip them, they'll take on the chin, they'll move on to the next brand, they'll go knock on Ferrari's door, or Aston, or whoever else is got the car of the month or the year. And I think that's the trouble. But I genuinely think the bubble is about to burst.
It is. Well, that's one of the things that Lee and I were talking about earlier. This window is closing massively. I can tell you, a couple of days ago we bought a GT4 with 400 miles on the clock. The car listed at 97.5, and we offered the guy £100,000 13 days ago, and he didn't want to take the £100,000, and he came back to us a couple of days ago, and the highest bid I could get out of a Porsche centre was 95.5, and that really took some going, because everyone else was at 93, 94.
I think isn't there some stock GT4s in the country. I've heard from a couple of people that I thought there is, or certainly unsold cars in showrooms.
Definitely, I'm not aware of any, but there definitely were towards the back end of last year a little bit of a rush of 2 or 3 cars. So it might have been those cars. But I mean, yeah, it just goes to show. So that is a classic case of a lot of people trying to outthink and outperform the market.
What was that guy's motivation? Was that purely a flipping car, or what was his reason for having a 400-mile new GT car that he was selling?
Serial car buyers as a family, and just I think not. I think to make money probably was never particularly on the agenda. I think it's actually just one of those cases of somebody who just loves buying lots of nice stuff, plays with it for a bit, sells it. But it does go to show how small that window is. I don't think people realise how small that window is. I've come across loads of conversations in the last year where people have tried to hold their GT car to profiteer out of it, and actually I think unless you're selling that car immediately, I think within 30 days most cars are wound off their premium in GT wise. So I think that's only going to continue, which is great because as Leon
comes back to enthusiast, doesn't it,
mate? I don't think you're going to get cars being flipped. I don't think so. I think if you offered me a GT car, a new 992 GT3, there was a time where I would have thought that's free motoring. I'll happily, yes please, I'll definitely take that. I'll definitely keep it for a year and I'll definitely sell it and not lose any money. I wouldn't be brave enough to do that now because I'd be convinced within 30 days it's gone backwards, and it will. And that's what it needs to do. That is the solution for the whole flipper market.
And all the Gen 2 GT3s are well under list now, aren't they?
Yeah.
That was so different, wasn't it, to the Gen 1 GT3s? It went crazy, and a few people were putting some eggs in the basket for the Gen 2 car, and that market just did not materialise like the Gen 1. And really, on paper, it had all the assets to do so with the return of the manual GT3. That's obviously the Gen 1 didn't have that.
People were being offered, like double list. I remember that being consistently, when they were at the peak of it,
really were.
People were being offered, double list on their GT cars. And you just think, some of those numbers are massive to start with, let alone doubling them up.
They've probably been losing. Do you know what? Well, there's such a few cars out there. I can tell you what the spreads are on them right now. If you've got a low mileage one of those and it's got all the toys, so it's Club Sport, it's buckets, it's lifts, it's ceramics. If you've got those 4 things on them, if you've got between 500 and 3,000 miles.
So the best of the best.
So top spec car. That car, despite what you're seeing out there in terms of adverts.
Before you say it, can we guess it?
Yeah.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, absolutely.
But I think we should guess it.
Okay,
I think Andy should go
first. Whoever gets closest will get
another
McVitie's Jaffa Cake McVitie's.
Go on, Andy. What do you reckon?
Absolutely no idea.
Give it a guess.
I'm not.
Let's go for the retail. I'll say, can you guess what the average retail transactional number was? So there are some cars advertised for stupid numbers. There are some cars under, but there is an average of what those cars have been transacting at. So
I'm not going to guess because I really haven't got a clue.
Okay, that's the spirit, Andy.
All right, to give you some context, so retail we're talking 150 to 160, aren't we?
Yeah, bang on.
Is that what
bang
you
on.
think?
Yeah, original retail numbers was 160, give or take.
As in when they were brand new at the showroom, they're 150, 160.
Right.
I think we know that much, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, like we said, they were trading double that at peak. To put some context to it.
Yeah,
so they were 300 plus, which is mega. Obviously, I just asked the question, how far off are we until we're 5 figures, not 6, so sub 100k. So we're talking between 100 and 150k.
I think for that car that you've just described, which is that's top of the market car to me, I'm saying that's 130.
Joe?
I reckon a little bit softer than that. I'm going to go 120. This is trade, is it, or retail?
No,
this is
125.
Retail, sorry, 130. I'll stick my 120 actually. Let's see if
so
that's
120, 125, 130. Lee is the closest.
Yeah.
So that
where's that Jaffa Cake? Pass it over.
So that car actually is quite a bit stronger actually than you guys were predicting. So that car retail is 150 to 160.
Okay.
It physically transacts out the door at late 140s to 150.
Yeah,
If it's an OPC,
Just can't
it'll
see
be
people
early
gonna,
150s.
Yeah, pay that. Like, I just can't see it.
So if we take the other end of the example, a 20,000 mile, nice but average spec, rather, because what we just talked about is a little bit hard to find, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's less
yeah,
of those,
yeah.
but the majority of them are probably going to be 20,000 milers.
Yeah.
With most of the options, but not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What do you reckon
we
on
did,
something like that?
I don't think you'd mind me telling you. So we sold a good friend of ours certain yellow car last year, and actually it's a really nice story. So this particular character, it was he got this car. It's his first new RS product that he was offered. He was so excited. He spec'd it, beautiful yellow 991 RS, and subsequently he spent every one of its 16,500 miles going around a track. So good on him. We got for that car last in the summer, just before things started to get really, really difficult. I think we got early mid 120. So it didn't affect.
Oh wow, okay.
Didn't destroy the price on it that much, which is quite surprising, isn't it?
So 120 something. So we've got to be somewhere between, on those sorts of cars now, somewhere between 1 and 120.
I would say retail that car is 130 now.
130.
Yeah, I would say that car is 129,950 if you were advertising it, and to buy it, every dealer on the planet is going to want at least 15k across that, because that will not be profit.
So
that will be.
So they're probably trading at 115.
Yeah, for a high miler, done some track work. Yeah, and that, guys, that is the car that you want to buy.
So come on then, go back to my question. When are they going to be sub 100k? When are they going
to be? I think the 0.1 RS has lost very little money in recent times. So I think we're probably still a year or so away from that.
Okay. They made so many of them though, didn't they? So many.
More than the brand wanted to let you all know.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think we all
isn't there
felt
5,000 in the UK?
I've heard all sorts of numbers.
Sorry, 5,000 worldwide.
I've heard 5,000, and goodness only knows if that's true or not. That's a lot more though for a limited edition.
Compare
car.
that to
insane.
The 997 Gen 2 RS, which I think was 1,700.
Yeah,
the 996 GT RS. We said this on the last podcast, I think. I was chatting to someone. 682, and then 991 Gen 1 5,000 worldwide. That is absolutely monumental.
Yeah,
monumental. That's got to be rocketing, I reckon. Yeah, but I just think as soon as it goes sub 100k, I just think that opens up to so many different people in so many different ways.
I think I would be really encouraging of people to buy those 991.1 RSs on a PCP and just get out and enjoy them, because they're mega. They really, for me personally, that's probably still my favourite 911. Actually, modern 911, a 0.1 RS. I love it, and unless you need the extra. So we've got a friend who's had both, Mr. H, and I called him and said, I really want to know your appraisal of the latest car, and I said, because I've heard some good, some bad, and some ugly, and he said it's amazing. And I said, what about the noise? Is that a negative? Everyone's whinging about the fact it doesn't sound as raucous as the last one. He said, I'm a racing driver, I don't care. He said it's better for me that it goes through noise reduction tests, easier. So, and he said the mechanical grip is like 50 times better, and so it's clear that the newer car's really, really, really good. What's interesting is you'll notice the gap between the 0.2 and the 0.1 isn't that, it's not that big. The 0.1s are selling at 150 and 150-ish, really, really, really transacting at that number, and the 0.2s are
about 180,
20 grand more. Yeah. So,
okay, Carl. So you, in what you do with PorscheBuyer.com at the moment, you're very privy to what's going on generally in the market. So what else is good in the marketplace at the moment?
What else is good? Still sticking with Porsche.
Yes, but we deviate away from 911s if you like. So, for example, 981 Cayman GTS has, until about a fortnight ago, just been such good news.
Yeah.
And then Porsche bought out the 4-litre GTS, obviously going back to a naturally aspirated flat six. And I bet, there's that pissed on a few people's fireworks holding on to 981 GTS manual cars.
I'll rattle through what I think is going to be good news for 2020. So, Macans, unbelievable. over half of everything being sold in the world with a Porsche badge, like well over half, is a Macan. I've heard on relatively sensible authority that a lot of the global Macans are now going to Asia, so therefore we're at a deficit in the UK, massive deficit. So back end of 2019, there were some stock cars people were trying to. You could even get a deal on them in your Porsche Centre. This year, those cars are just completely out. You can't get one. So I think the centres now, that most of the very proactive, busy centres have sold out of quarter one and quarter two stock. And we were in a kind of stock review of one of the larger groups 2 weeks ago, and the decision was made to just put everything Macan up 10% because you can't buy them. So Macan will be really good, certainly for the next 6 to 12 months, because it takes 6 months for that problem to wash out. Yeah. So if you buy one now, and in 6 months you could probably sell it and it will retail near enough what you've paid for it today. I think 718 4 cylinders will probably have a bit of a tough time of it, because obviously 718 6 cylinders been announced. Give or take, you can spec one of those cars up for 70 grand, and you've got a really, 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 really properly sorted car. That's definitely going to have a tough impact on the 718s. But weirdly, the 981s continue to just do really, really well. 997 GTS, we were talking about, Lee and I this morning, said that they just continue to do whatever the hell they want, which is just so funny. That car is such an enigma. It's never changed. In I don't know, in 7 years of me being in the network and doing this, they're still the same money that they ever were.
Yeah, and really have,
crazy.
I rate them, but I don't rate them that much. And it's so bizarre. I'd love a 997 GTS, but I don't rate it as being the only car in 7 years to have not lost a penny. I don't get it. It is an immensely clever, cool proposition that's obviously still, like, everyone's still in love with. 981 Spiders, just go and buy one of those. That is definitely going to be a good news car, because I think you can get a bit of a deal on them when they're floating around. And again, like the 981 Cayman GT4, it has not changed price. Well, the GT4 hasn't. The 981 Spiders have just kind of been a bit hard work, and I just think they're just one of the best cars that Porsche have ever made.
Well, the hard work in terms from a sales point of view.
Yeah, they always seem to take 2 or 3 months to sell. Which,
stick around.
Yeah, I mean, they always sell, but you got to be prepared for it to sit there for 3 months.
I think a lot of people don't even know they exist.
Mate, they're arguably better than the GT4, because they've got way better road presence, road manners, and they're definitely prettier, and they're more of a collector's car. And who cares about the roof, because it's going to sit in your garage and only come out on nice days. So I don't get why that car hasn't already started to go up. So yeah, they seem to be really good. 987 Spider, 987 Cayman R, they're starting to warm up now. 993s have started. We're talking about this, have definitely started to warm up now as well.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, I'm obviously an owner of a 993, and they almost become out of favour.
Yeah, 100%.
Like the 964, it's obviously used to be the absolute everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the 993 was the loved of the later air-cooled.
Yeah.
That's kind of flipped.
Literally, you're so on point with that. There's so much used car data out there that Lee and I were sharing earlier. That is exactly what's happened. And Lee asked me if I thought that was because maybe a lot of the 964s have been sold out of the country and to singer or recreation type people. And I think it's the opposite. I think is actually just because typical Porsche drivers, all of us owners, like Porsche because it is different, and it's a bit. It is a controversial car choice because it's everything about a Porsche is different, and you don't want to be the norm. Yeah. So that's why you've chosen a Porsche. And I think you're exactly right. I think it's gone out of favour. And all of a sudden now, because it's gone out of favour and nobody's talking about it, I just think that makes it cool again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got
sure
quite
its day will come. I'm sure it is. It has to. It's again, as we were saying, the 993. It's the last of the air-cooled. Its place in history is assured. Yes. And yet, at the moment, 964 Carrera 2s, after our conversation earlier, went home and had a look at prices. And there's, some of them are still, Carrera 2 coupes knocking around at 70, 75k. I think it's absurd. Absolutely absurd.
Bad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You know, the 993 should, in theory, be the better car. It's the one that followed it, you know.
Which day is coming, I think, isn't it? I think people are starting to turn up.
I'm sure Andy's hoping so.
Yeah, mate, I think hold on to your 993 for this year, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Right, Carl, we're going to bring you on to our 10-question quick-fire round. Are you ready?
I think so.
Number 1, air or water?
Air.
Number 2, favourite Porsche model?
964 3.6 turbo.
Number 3, favourite Porsche colour?
Oh, peppermint.
Number 4, ultimate Porsche icon?
James Dean.
Excellent.
Number 5, favourite track?
Silverstone Experience Centre, the little one.
Number 6, Tafouche or not Tafouche?
Oh my God, really? Yeah, definitely 2.
Good man. 7, stock or hot rod?
Now, hot rod, but always historically a purist and stock. But I've changed.
Check you out. Number 8, athletic or bubble butt?
Definitely athletic.
Number 9, cars and coffee or track day? We know you're a talker. Come on.
Yeah, I want to say cars and coffee because that is more my thing. But if anyone hasn't done it, you've got to do a track day because it's just the funniest day you'll ever spend in your life. The banter's amazing. Track day. I'm track day.
Cool. And last but not least, number 10, is the Cayman a real Porsche?
100%. I think the Cayman is the Porsche Ferry Porsche or Ferdinand Porsche would have built today if he was alive. So, yes.
Thank you very much. Some great answers there.
Thanks.
Well, look, Carl, we have only and really scratched the surface there for your knowledge here. So thank you so much for coming on this podcast. You're an admirable salesman, and not only that, you're a top bloke as well. So if you would care to come back, we would love to have you and share some more of your knowledge with listeners. So Carl Mayer from PorscheBuyer.com.
Yeah, got it.
Thanks very much indeed, my man.
Thanks, guys.